The Los Angeles Lakers post All-Star break are 10-6, which ties them with a handful of teams for the fifth best record post All-Star game, and the teams that are around or above them are all teams that are pretty universally considered to be contenders. And of course, the irony of this is that the Lakers have been without LeBron James, who just made his return the other day against the Chicago Bulls. So, with his return and the Lakers being as good as they have been without him, there's a real chance that this Lakers team is a contender. But of course, given the hole they dug themselves in early in the season, it's not going to be an easy route to go far in the playoffs if that is indeed what's going to happen. So in today's video, I wanted to talk about what, if any, path the Los Angeles Lakers have in this year's playoffs to see just how far they could potentially go. March Madness is here, which means today is a great time to download this video's partner, PrizePicks. PrizePicks is easily the best way to play daily fantasy for someone who is new to daily fantasy. I could not be happier with the app's easy layout and experience. It is just you versus the projections. Select 2 to 6 players and pick whether you think they will get more or less of the projected stat. Get them all right, and you can win up to 25 times your money. PrizePicks is also introducing something new and exclusive to PrizePicks called Reboots, which essentially protects your pick from injuries. If a player you picked gets hurt in the first half of the game, those picks are rebooted. Essentially, injuries are not going to ruin your picks. And what's great for you is that if you have not played PrizePicks yet, all first-time users that use my code RUSTY will get a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. So let's say you put in $50, you will receive $50 from PrizePicks and so on. So click the link in the description to download PrizePicks and use code RUSTY to get an instant deposit match up to $100. Thank you to PrizePicks for sponsoring the video. So real quick, I do want to talk about what the adjustment period for LeBron James and the Lakers actually looks like with these last couple of games of the season, because that is really pivotal to how far they're going to be able to go. If LeBron blends in seamlessly, that's going to be quite scary, but as we saw in the first game versus the Chicago Bulls, that did not quite come to be. So it might be a little bit of an adjustment period, but if he is able to fully acclimate to that roster and they're able to develop a pretty reasonable amount of chemistry given the amount of time that they have, then that leads to a real chance of this team being a genuine contender when you put them in the playoffs. That means wherever they end up in the seeding, whether that be in the play-in or whether they even manage to avoid that altogether, one way or the other, they're probably going to find their way into the playoffs, because it's not likely that a contending team is going to lose to like the Timberwolves or the OKC Thunder in the play-in. Maybe if they ended up facing the Dallas Mavericks because Luka just has 50, 20, and 20, but otherwise, I don't really think that's going to be much of a concern. So then when we're looking at what their playoff matchup may be, it's going to come down to some of the top seeds in the Western Conference, which of course is not ideal. Now, where the Lakers are looking and where they most want to match up is of course going to be the Sacramento Kings, given their lack of defense and their lack of experience. The Los Angeles Lakers post-trade deadline, which essentially just means post making all of those big trades, have been a top 5 defense in the league, but really more so middle of the pack offensively. Now, middle of the pack is actually an improvement from where they were. However, they're still not an excellent offense. Of course, adding a 29 point per game score and all-time great playmaker into that mix could definitely elevate that offense rather significantly. But having a bit of a layup of a matchup for that offense is going to be really significant. So being able to really get in stride and get their offensive flow figured out in the first round of the playoffs, that is of course the most ideal matchup. What is less ideal would be the Memphis Grizzlies, who are of course a phenomenal defensive team and the Denver Nuggets, who, despite the fact that people like to tear them apart defensively, specifically Nikola Jokic, is a team that has also been up there in defensive rating post-All-Star break. With all that said, the most ideal matchup, of course, is going to be the Sacramento Kings, and as much as I do love the Sacramento Kings, I do think this Lakers team, fully healthy, probably takes care of them rather easily. A Grizzlies series is a little bit more complicated. Now, this would be interesting because both of these teams have similar-ish problems. The half-court offense can be questionable, but the fast break offense is, of course, great, and the defense is, of course, great. I do think I would still pick the Lakers to win that. Again, this is taking the assumption that LeBron is acclimated and fits this roster well. Things are working. Of course, that's also taking Austin Reeves' improvement into this, Jared Vanderbilt's defense and what he's done alongside Anthony Davis, and presuming that everybody here is relatively healthy. Of course, if AD or LeBron or a couple of key role players get injured, then that's going to wash this. But this is an ideal scenario here. So, I do think they would probably beat the Grizzlies. I do think they would almost definitely beat the Sacramento Kings. I don't know about the Denver Nuggets because they, of course, have the superstar factor. I mean, I guess you maybe want to say that for Ja, but I don't know. I think he's still borderline in that. And Nikola Jokic is almost definitively that, unless you ask some annoying people on Twitter. But in general, yes, there's that factor, the factor of while the Sacramento Kings offense has been the best in the league, statistically speaking, I trust Denver's offense a little bit more in a playoff setting, given that they've been there before, of course. And I don't think that the Lakers would beat them quite. I do think it's possible, even still, which says quite a lot about how good this roster has been constructed in such a short amount of time, but I would probably be banking on the success of the Nuggets in that situation. But let's just say they face the Memphis Grizzlies or the Sacramento Kings and they manage to win that first round series. Who are they going to see themselves matched up against in the second round? Well, if it's against the Sacramento Kings, they will more likely than not play either the Warriors or the Grizzlies. And if it's not that, if it's reversed and they play the Grizzlies in the first round, right now they'd be playing either the Kings or the Timberwolves. But of course, the wins in the Western Conference right now are so neck and neck. So many teams have similar records. As I mentioned, the Lakers were tied for the 5th best record post All-Star break, but it's like a 6-way tie almost, like 5-way, something like that. So that said, let's say second round, they're facing either the Grizzlies or the Golden State Warriors. The Warriors are a team I plan on making a video on later this week because it's Tuesday. That's correct. I just checked. The Warriors are a team that's interesting going into these playoffs. They have also had the same record as the Los Angeles Lakers post All-Star break, and they've been missing Andrew Wiggins. Not that that's on equal footing to missing LeBron James. And maybe Wiggins is back for the playoffs. Maybe he's not. We don't know. But overall, the Warriors would not be ideal to face, nor would the Memphis Grizzlies. Again, as I mentioned, I do think the Lakers can beat them. But if they beat the Kings in the first round, maybe that's cool. But if they face them head on initially, that's going to be a battle. And that means second round, there's probably you're going to hope for a weaker matchup. And if it's the Kings or the Timberwolves, more likely than not the Kings between those two, then yeah, I could see them making it all the way to the conference finals. But facing a team like the Warriors and Grizzlies in the second round, I think could hobble them a bit more. But there's also the positive of by the time they've made the second round, they've had even further reps playing as a team now in a playoff setting, and very clearly successful reps given that they made it out of the first round. So there's a positive and a negative. They're more likely going to have to play at least like 6 games depending on who they play in the first round. But I do worry about fatigue being an issue, especially given that LeBron James is playing here, and we're worried about his health and his age and all of that. So then that leads us to the conference finals, and more likely than not, they would be facing either the Phoenix Suns or the Denver Nuggets. I'm almost certain one of those two teams is going to be making the Western Conference Finals, and given the current standings, they would have to face off in the second round, assuming that the Suns were not beat by the Clippers, because I do think there is a slim chance of that happening. In my most recent video predicting the entirety of the playoffs, I did say that, but also that did not factor in the fact that Paul George just had a huge injury. That video was recorded before that. So probably not anymore if that's going to be a problem in the playoffs, which it presumably is. So either the Suns or the Denver Nuggets. At this point, if they've made it this far, the Lakers definitely have the chemistry and all of that stuff figured out at that point. I don't think it's a worry anymore. I think that's what next year's version of the Lakers would look like. And I think next year's version of the Lakers, given that LeBron just has one more year of superstar production left in him, we'll have to see. If that is indeed the case, then I do think they have a very strong chance of winning the title next year. So if we're getting that version of the team, by the time we're getting to the Western Conference Finals, all the chemistry has been built up, the experience playing together is there, then I could see them winning that. I would not bank on it. As I previously mentioned, I don't think they would beat the Denver Nuggets in the first round, so I also don't really think they would beat them in the conference final. And same really goes for the Phoenix Suns. I guess it depends on which version of Chris Paul you're getting and what their bench is capable of doing and all of that, but it's Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and DeAndre Ayton at least. That is a team that I would also pick to beat the Lakers in this context. That said, if they beat either of them after making it this far, I wouldn't be that shocked, because I do think the Lakers are genuinely that good. Now, if they made the finals, again, I really would not bet on that, but just let's say it does. I almost said, let's say, hypothetically. Gross. Not that guy. Whether it's the Bucks or the Celtics, I'm giving them that series. If it's the Sixers, maybe not. Probably not. Because the Sixers' perimeter defense is really concerning to me. That's really the biggest area of contention to them, for them to me, and whether or not they will succeed, because Joel Embiid is a really strong interior defender. But when you look at the rest of that roster, there's a couple of okay defensive guys, but nobody who's really locking up, and LeBron dealing with that. AD having to defend him and worrying about Anthony Davis receiving dump-off passes. The shooting the Lakers have added with this traded line move. Jared Vanderbilt cutting back door constantly. I don't think that the Sixers would be well equipped to defend that, but I do think the Bucks and the Celtics would be. And it'll come down to both of those teams have been great defensively, but one of them's also been great offensively, and one of them hasn't. And while I did say earlier I would give it to the Lakers that they could be a much better offensive team when LeBron is back, I still don't think they would be better than what the Bucks or Celtics have been, especially the Celtics. The Bucks maybe. But it would become a defensive battle, and it would be a matter of which team's offense was better, and I'm going with the two teams that have been to the finals most recently. And not a team that's entirely different and entirely different circumstances from the last time they were in the finals. So yeah, I do think the Lakers have a path to go pretty deep in the playoffs. They're not going to be my pick to win the championship, because I think they dug themselves into too big of a hole early on in the season, and there's just really not enough time to develop that familiarity with your teammates, and that stuff really matters to me. If you have not noticed, I've harped on it multiple times. Continuity is really important, and if LeBron had been playing with this team since the trade deadline happened, then I would feel really good about the Los Angeles Lakers. But given that that has not happened, and there's only like 5 or 6 games left for him to adjust to this team and for the team to adjust to him, going into a playoff setting, it's definitely far from ideal. But yeah, that is it. Shout out to Rudy for editing the video, and goodbye.